Hey, so the last video was showing how to set up Docker Swarm. It's pretty straightforward, really easy. Most of what I've learned was from Elton Stoneman and Nigel Poulton from their courses on Pluralsight and books and stuff like that. Those are great resources. Check those out. I'll put links in so you can follow them and find them. So what I'm going to do is actually deploy a stack, which is a group of services that are defined in a YAML file to actually use Swarm. So it's not just a concept, right? Because for me, things are much easier to understand if I can actually see it, visualize it, not just read files or read documentation. I actually want to see somebody do it and see the results of it. So for me, that's a really valuable thing. So anyway, let me show you this. So the portainer YAML file is actually the definition of what the services, you can see it says services, right? It's pretty straightforward. Pull in the image, the portainer image. This is one key thing that I'm doing just in my lab. I'm mounting, so I have a mount point that I'm mounting internally to the front end, so it's only a single, container running the front end management, UI and stuff like that. And so if you look, I have this is the mount point, and there's a portainer directory. So you can see I've used it before. It just actually lets me persist it, and this is mounted to all the manager nodes because one of the key things is the placement. Is the constraint is node role is equal to manager, so that way it only puts the UI on one of the manager nodes. And then it creates the network's traffic public, which is for the load balancer or reverse proxy, and the internal network, which is for the agents, which is this service. So you can see that it uses the internal network only. It's just for that, so the agents can talk back to the management UI. And the deploy mode for here is global, which means every node in the cluster is going to get this service, whereas this one, the front end, is not. It's only going to go to one single manager node. So that's kind of the way that works. And then I could put this in the YAML file, but I'm choosing not to, just because this is, I kind of was using resources I've, copy and paste and type that out what I want to do. I've added publish, specific publish ports and stuff like that. So this is the traffic config. So you can see it's listening on my internal domain. And this is, the Docker watch shows this is where its swarm or traffic is tied to the Docker socket. So it's going to listen to everything running the Docker is doing, and it's running in swarm mode. So it's going to publish the ports, so it's aware of everything going on in the cluster. So now we do a Docker stack deploy, and then the file portainer.yaml, and we have to specify a name. Can't forget that. So it goes through and creates the services, creates the network, and just goes through. I mean, it's really fast, so I can show you. Docker service ls shows the service that was deployed, and you can see the services. There's 9 of them now. I can do a PS. You have to specify what you're looking for, and you can see it's deployed an agent to all the nodes in the cluster, and they're all running. So that's good. If I want to see the front end, it's actually running on traffic 1. So remember, that was one of the manager nodes. I can also do a Docker stack ls, and that'll show the full stack, which is just only one. It's just the one portainer stack running the 2 services, and it's in Swarm. That way, you can tell what it's doing. So it's kind of cool. Works pretty well. So what does that mean, right? It actually went through and deployed. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to show you, network. So this is all the networks now. You saw it create the portainer internal. The traffic public was already there. I used it. I had already created it manually. So you can see using the overlay driver. So it's meaning it's running across everything. It's not just, so it's a swarm. It's scoped to the swarm. So it's not just a local to this single dmanager1 node. It's running across everything. So all the Docker nodes or all the Docker VMs are running and in this swarm have this network, or they can at least talk on it even if they don't have it replicated right now. So now let me go do the traffic. I'll just do a simple copy paste, and it should come up. And we'll do a Docker container. Let me do a Docker service ls. Yep, now we can see the traffic service is running. It's replicated. You can see these are the ports it's listening on, or it's publishing. So it's, it's taking all the traffic from 8080. 8080 is the UI for traffic. That way you can kind of see what it's doing. And then 9000 is what portainer listens on, the front end for portainer. So now the other thing is on my machine, so I'm going to browse to the portainer UI. But in order to do that, I had to, I have to edit my localhost file and added portainer.vship.com. That way, because if you remember, it's looking specifically for the domain, and it's publishing portainer, so it knows, because it knows what's listening on the back end. Because it's tied to Docker, it sees that something is listening on 9000. I believe that's right. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, which is fine. Please do. So it's publishing, it's looking specifically to direct traffic for portainer.vship.com to that UI. So no matter what node, no matter what IP I hit, I will be able to get to it because traffic is listening. Because all the nodes are listening on that port, and they'll just route it back to that's the beauty of Swarm and Docker, right? All the nodes listen, and they'll route it to the proper place. So that makes it much easier. Okay, so now this is the UI for portainer. Remember I said that I had already used, I was mounting the /mnt/data/portainer. It's an NFS share that I'm doing across, I have on all the manager nodes. That way, whichever node, gets the traffic front end already has that config data. So that's the beauty of that is, I could completely blow it all away and redeploy it or upgrade it, and all of the configuration is still there. So this is what the UI looks like. It's really, I think it's useful. So it actually does build out. So this is not all there is. So you can see I have my one swarm cluster and one stack. And this, goes along with what I've done, one stack, 3 services. So if I click on it, now you can see these are all the options that I have for that swarm cluster. You can see everything that's done. Another cool thing is, the app templates you can deploy from, it'll do a pull from hub.docker.com and deploy any of these as a stack. So, great thing, CockroachDB. I think that's fantastic. OpenFAS for, testing serverless. If you're into operations management stuff, Microsoft's kind of cool. Anyway, those are the options. So you can see the stack. These are the things that, this is where the beauty of it is, I think, really. So I can drill down into it, and you can see it's a global service, and this one, I can even scale it here if I wanted to. I don't want to, but and then if you expand it out, you can see what's running the task, what all the nodes are on. These are all some cool actions. You can look at the logs. You can do it. This is basically the equivalent of Docker, container inspect. So statistics. Actually open a console. Run a bash command if I have pop-ups allowed, but I don't, so I'm not going to go through it. But that's another pretty cool feature. Let me go back. So yeah, I mean, you can see, those are the pretty cool things, and you can see it's just running. This one's running traffic. If you want to go look at the services, and here you can see. Let me go to containers. This is the images. This is all of the images that have been pulled on all of the nodes. So let me expand this a little bit. You can see it's, portainer and traffic, right? And that's just the normal latest stuff. This shows all the networks. You can drill down to the, into not each one of these, but a lot of them to see, specific details about them. So that's interesting. It can do a lot of different things with that. These are any volumes that are connected or mounted. If you have configs or secrets for like database passwords and stuff like that. This is the actual swarm resource status and config stuff. And here I could actually go, you can see if it's a manager, IP, all the information and whatnot. I can actually drill into each node. If you want to change a label, for constraints and stuff like that, you can do it. So it's really useful. And then, the other things for like just general settings, you can do if you pay for it. Basically, you can do RBAC, external authentication through, single sign-on. I'm not sure about Kerberos and stuff. I've never really looked into it. You can see it's $10 for a year, for instance. So it's really reasonable. And this lists endpoints, right? So this is, you could do each one individually, or you could just do the cluster, the swarm cluster itself, and how you want to talk to it. So that's pretty much it. You can add other registries, which is useful if you have hopefully you have private registries where you keep all of your container images and stuff like that. So definitely add them here if you want, have any of those. I don't right now, but so that's really portainer, and what you can do with a swarm. Not just here's how easy it is to copy and paste, Docker swarm join strings. That's the easy part. Now it's like, well, give me something to do with it. Well, this is what you can do with it. So I hope you found this useful, and I will see you next time. Thanks. And the last quick thing to see is the traffic UI, which is really, just shows, what's on the front end, and it shows what it's, it's routing, what host to listen for as a header, right? So if you hit portainer.vship.com, it knows where to send it. So if you go by IP or anything else, it won't route any of that traffic. It's only going to look in the host header file, or in the host header of your browser requests. If you're not requesting this, you're not going to go anywhere, basically. And that's what's great about it, is you can say, okay, I could say if I'm doing the swarm pit, or if I'm using something else, doesn't matter. You can specify the domain, and it'll send it to the proper location, so you don't have to worry about only having, port 80 of. You don't have to publish it once and now you're done, right? One and done. You don't want that. So you want to be able to use multiple different containers listening on the same port, on the same cluster, and you can do that with this type of, you can do it with Nginx, and other stuffs, but, I just like, this one's so much easier. Traffic is just definitely a lot easier to set up and easier to configure. And so that's this is kind of, it helps you see what it's doing, at least for me. It helps me see what it's, doing visually. I don't have to go, okay, well, the file says this, and I hope that's what it's doing. I can actually see it. So that's, very useful for me.